Thank you. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. We start off by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending our peace and blessings upon our Master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with beneficial knowledge and understanding and wisdom. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with ikhlas, sincerity and istiqamah, steadfastness and qabul, acceptance in all our actions and all our sayings. We start off every class by asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with the notion of sincerity in our actions and our sayings, and to grant us acceptance in our actions and our sayings, and to grant us steadfastness so we could be steadfast and not fall off the track and pass away in a state of submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the onset of every class of knowledge, sacred knowledge, to bless us with beneficial knowledge. And we have expanded on this 15 times already, saying that beneficial knowledge is knowledge that brings you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why it's beneficial, because it grants you a greater fear of Allah and awareness of Allah. It brings you closer to Allah. That knowledge is beneficial. And it's a knowledge that's ultimately going to be a source of your salvation in the hereafter, because it is a knowledge that will be a witness for you and not against you on the Day of Judgment. As we mentioned hundreds of times, everything you do in this world and everything you gain in this world and your harvest in this world, you'll reap it in the hereafter, and your actions and your sayings are either going to be a witness for you or against you. So we ask Allah for knowledge that will be our lawyer, our intercessor, and a witness for us on the Day of Judgment. That knowledge that we implement and act upon, that knowledge that changes the state of our heart and brings us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the entire purpose of this class. Tazkiyah, purification of the soul and the heart, to grant us a purification of our souls and our hearts so we may come closer to Allah. And that's the ultimate goal of everything we do as Muslims. The ultimate goal of everything we do as Muslims and everything we embark upon is to come closer to Allah. We study the Quran on Wednesday in our class of tafsir. The ultimate goal of studying tafsir is to gain a deeper understanding of Allah's words, the Quran. And the ultimate goal of gaining a deeper understanding of the Quran is to come closer to Allah. The ultimate goal of everything we do as Muslims and everything we study as Muslims is to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we remind ourselves of our intentions always. As we said, we're going to remind ourselves always when we start this class why we're here in the masjid. Because you took time out of your day on a Monday to come to the masjid, the most blessed place on earth to Allah, and the most beloved place to Allah is the masajid. So you took time out of your day. Remind yourself why you came to the masjid and renew your intention. So perhaps you walked in with an insincere intention or a shaky intention, so now you have an opportunity before we begin to renew your intention. Renew your intention and seek the pleasure of Allah alone. Don't seek the pleasure of a woman, and don't seek the pleasure of a man. And don't seek to be seen by any creation of Allah. Seek to be seen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the King of Kings and the Creator of the creation. Seek to be seen by Allah only and to please Allah only, and you will receive salvation in this world and the next. And that was the topic that we began speaking about. The first chapter of the book was showing off, Riya. So we began this blessed class about a month and a half ago, and we did not have class last week. I was feeling very under the weather. Alhamdulillah, I'm feeling a lot better. New Jersey, change of weather, change of season, a lot of work. Alhamdulillah, I'm feeling a lot better. So we continue our Monday night journeys in the science of Tazkiyah, the purification of our hearts and our souls, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us success and openings. We began the chapter in the last class of showing off, which is Riya. And we spoke about this and we defined it, and we mentioned some ayahs of the Quran that refer to Riya or showing off. And we said that it was a characteristic of the characteristics of the hypocrites. And it's not a good thing to show off, it's a good thing to be sincere. And we said that Islam comes in every single regard, and Islam comes in every single phase, and Islam comes in every single aspect to drain in us the notion of sincerity and to teach us the notion of sincerity. Because the Muslim is someone who works to attain salvation in the hereafter. And in order to attain salvation in the hereafter and reach Jannah, you have to be sincere in your actions. Your actions should be for Allah and Allah alone. So we said a lot of things in regards to Riya. We were speaking about it in detail. We talked about the different types of riya in our speech and in our actions. And we spoke about hidden riya or subtle riya. And we mentioned the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in regards to subtle riya or minor shirk, as the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ called it. He called it minor shirk. And it's like a dabib al-namli. We said it's like the crawlings of an ant. There's a shirk more hidden than the crawling of an ant. Shall I not tell you something to say to rid you of it? Both minor and major. Minor and major forms of shirk. Say, O Allah, I seek refuge in you, that I may associate partners with you, that which I know of, and I seek forgiveness for you, doing so unknowingly. We said hidden riya was the difficult riya, or the difficult showing off to detect. It goes undetected. Such as, some examples we gave, are dragging your feet and feeling reluctant to perform a good deed until someone begins to watch you. So you feel extra motivation when someone's watching you, because you seek the gratification of people or the praise of people. They're going to say, oh, mashallah, look at him, he's standing in sunnah for 10 minutes. What is he reading in sunnah? Right? And we said another example is feeling glad that someone saw you perform a good deed. Like you feel like a chip on your shoulder when you hear of someone speaking about you doing a good deed. You love it when you hear the admiration of people. This is a hidden form of riya. And when the praise dies down, you may find yourself finding it very burdensome or like a heavy task to perform a good deed when the praise dies down or when people do not see you. And also we said overly fearing or thinking about the criticism of people was a sign of hidden riya. Then we ended the last class speaking about something which is the opposite of riya. We said what is not considered riya? What is something that is not riya? We said something that is not riya is setting a good example for people to follow with a sincere intention. And we spoke about the famous hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, that whomsoever من دعا إلى هدى كان له من الأجر مثل أجور من تبعه لا ينقص ذلك من أجورهم شيئا ومن دعا إلى ضلالة كان عليه من الإثم مثل آثام من تبعه لا ينقص ذلك من آثامهم شيئا. We said that whomsoever calls to an act of guidance or he teaches someone something, he gets the entire full reward of that thing without anything decreasing from his scale. And we gave the example of teaching a new convert or a young boy who's growing up Surah Al-Fatiha. So this is someone calling to an act of guidance and teaching someone something good. And if you do this, you receive the full reward from that person. Every time that person reads Surah Al-Fatiha in Salah, and Salah is 5 times a day, and Fatiha is 4 times in Salah, or 2 times in Salah, or 3 times in Salah, and it's 5 times a day obligatory, so you'll be receiving a lot of reward is what we said. And we said that someone came to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, one of the companions, asking him for a beast, a riding beast, like a horse or a donkey that he could ride. And the Prophet ﷺ said, I'm sorry, I don't have one, but I know where you could find one. So he guided him to someone else that could guide him, that could give him like a riding beast to borrow. So he went to that person and he found the riding beast, and he came back to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and he told him, thank you so much, basically I got what I needed. And the Prophet said to him, the famous hadith, فَقَالَ إِنَّ الدَّالَ عَلَى الْخَيْرِ كَفَاعِلِهِ. This is the famous hadith. Indeed, the one who guides to something good is like the one who does it. So when you tell someone to donate for Gaza, and you call people to donate and they donate because of your call, you receive that full reward. Or you tell someone to go to the masjid because there's a beneficial class in the masjid and the person goes, you receive the full reward with the condition, of course, and the prerequisite of sincerity. So as long as you were sincere when you called out, or you taught, or you did something good, and then it's followed, you receive the full reward for that thing. We said this is not showing off. This is someone setting a good example or teaching something with sincerity. And that's where we ended the last class. And then we said we also said another form or another example of something that's not considered riya. We said another example of something that is not considered riya is committing a sin in private and fearing people may see you. We said this is modesty. Committing a sin in private and fearing people may see you and not exposing your sin because you are embarrassed. This is not riya. This is embarrassment, and this is something from iman. This is haya. And interestingly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will not embarrass you from the first time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will not embarrass you from the first fall. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will not embarrass you from the first zallah. We're all human beings, so we all sin. It's natural to sin because you're human. you're going to sin. If you're not going to sin, you're not going to be a human. You're going to sin because you're a human. So when you fall and you sin, you will not be embarrassed from the first time. If you continue to accumulate sin or you persist on that sin, then eventually you will be caught. And there's many stories and examples we could give. There's many stories and examples we could give with our own selves. We could look into our own selves. We don't have to look into other people. But sometimes you may see someone. Sometimes you may see someone doing something or haram or inappropriate, and it's like you're thinking to yourself, like, how did I see that? Like the scenario or the circumstance that allowed you to see it is just from Allah, 100%. 100%. And I speak maybe more than all of you because I'm an imam of a masjid, so people are more embarrassed of me, or they try to hide from me more. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's because they have veneration or respect of the religion of Islam, and I'm someone who, inshallah, propagates the religion of Islam, or I'm seen as an icon or a sign of Islam because I'm an imam. So they feel more embarrassed from me. But I don't know why Allah loves to show me stuff all the time, and it's not my intention at all to see it. But this is because the person, it's not the first time for that person doing that thing. I guarantee you. It's something that he has done more than once, and things don't just happen by chance, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He shows you, or He embarrasses the person who sins constantly. And I say this for you to be scared. You should be scared of being embarrassed, and we should always make dua to Allah to not be embarrassed. We don't want to be embarrassed. Who wants to be embarrassed? Say, Allahumma la tafdahna fawq al-ardi wa tahta al-ardi wa yawm al-ardi alayk. This is a beautiful hadith, a beautiful dua. We say, oh Allah, do not embarrass us, fawq al-ard, over the ground, wa tahta al-ard, and under the ground, wa yawm al-ardi alayk, and the day that we are displayed to you or presented to you. In other words, Ya Allah, please do not embarrass us in dunya, because over the ground is dunya when you're alive, and under the ground is when you're in your grave. You don't want to be embarrassed in your grave. And being embarrassed in your grave could mean that after you pass away, something comes out, and you can't control that because you're dead now, and you can't defend yourself because you're dead now, and that's scary. And when you're in your grave, your good deeds, they cease, they stop, except for three things, as the hadith, the famous hadith in Bukhari, ينقطع عمل ابن آدم إلا عن ثلاث, the famous hadith mentioning the three ways where you could receive reward in your grave, that the individual's good deeds will cease except from three things. From a sadaqah jariyah, which is an ongoing charity, something that he did that's ongoing, like he built a well in a country that has no water, or in an area that has no water, and the people are using that water every single day. He's receiving reward. Or he gave money to the masjid. Giving sadaqah to the masjid is an ongoing charity because they're going to use that money to pay the water bill. Maybe someone makes wudu, or they do something to the masjid, or they build the masjid, and someone comes and prays on it. You're getting the reward of that. An ongoing charity, a pious offspring making dua for you, or knowledge that was beneficial that was taught. So you taught someone, like I said, Surah Al-Fatiha, and he's reading Surah Al-Fatiha after you left. Or you have like a pious old uncle teaching a convert how to read Quran, and he goes out of his way 2 hours a day teaching the convert how to read the book of Allah. The pious old uncle is a smart man because he's harvesting for the harvest of the hereafter. The pious old uncle, he passes away one day, and the convert brother continues to read the Quran his entire life, and the convert brother gets married to a convert sister, and the convert couple have a convert baby. I'm just joking. They have a Muslim baby. But the baby grows up, and the baby reads Quran, and the baby's grandson reads Quran, and the pious uncle from Masjid Yunus or from Masjid wherever that taught the guy or took some time out of his day every day, he was very smart. He was building for the day of judgment because he was a smart man, and he receives all the reward from the convert brother and the convert brother's wife and the convert brother's kids. Wallahi, all the reward accumulating in your grave. That's beneficial knowledge that was taught, something that was taught. So you should go out of your way to teach someone something beneficial. But of course you should know what you're teaching them before you teach it, you know? So don't teach someone something wrong, and don't be eager to teach. You could do beneficial things some other ways. But what I was going to say is something that's really scary is the opposite side, which is accumulating sin after you pass away, like accumulating sin, like doing something and your sins keep increasing. For example, teaching someone about something haram. It's the flip side of sadaqah jariyah. It's the opposite. Teaching someone about a haram website and sharing haram content. And there's a story that's often mentioned by an Arab scholar or an Arab person of da'wah, and this story gives me goosebumps all the time. It's a nice story for us to hear, even though we don't like to talk about these things, but these things happen. There was a brother, he was a young guy, and young guys like to look at haram stuff, if they're weak and they have no iman and their iman is weak. So he used to share haram content and he put it on auto share. So he would share haram content to a group of 300, 400, 500 people, and then he passed away. And the haram content was being shared constantly after he passed away. And his friends were scared for him because they paid janazah on him and they kept getting haram content from his dead body because he put it on auto share because he's so smart. And I guess he was not thinking of the hereafter, because anyone that thinks of the hereafter won't do such a thing. And then they were trying to get this content to stop being shared and they couldn't stop it. This is the story I heard, you know, and this is really scary. Really scary stuff, like really scary. Like he's getting tortured and he's getting more tortured and more sin. Like the sins are just accumulating. The sins are just going up. So inshallah, the Muslim is so much smart and he thinks prepare for the hereafter. He always thinks that everything he's going to do could be a bad deed on his scale or a good deed on his scale. So inshallah, we take heed before we pass away and we understand, wallahi, and we have a good ending. So this dua is beautiful. You should make it all the time. If you want to make it in English, if you want to make it in Chinese, make dua in English, no problem. There's no problem. You're talking to Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He understands all languages. He created all languages. We have an incorrect understanding when it comes to dua. It's a frustrating understanding. Of course, it's good to make Quranic dua. I'm not saying it's not good to make Quranic dua. If you have a dua in the Quran, there's many du'ats in the Quran, make Quranic dua, that's great. And there's dua from the Sunnah, that's great as well. But the greatest dua to make is a sincere dua from your heart. When you talk to Allah, and you tunajillah, and when you talk to Allah sincerely with humility, and you talk to Allah like you're having a conversation with Allah, and you ask Allah for something so sincerely in the language that you speak. And if that language is Arabic, make it in Arabic. If it's not Arabic, make it in English. Sincere dua is the dua that is accepted. أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ. Allah, He says in Surah An-Naml, who is the one that answers the call of the muttar when he calls out to Allah? The muttar is the individual that's on the brink of death. We give an example always. Muttar is the individual that's going to die. He has nothing left, so he makes dua to Allah with sincerity. He's in the desert and he's going to pass away from dehydration, or he's in the middle of the Arctic Ocean and he's in Titanic and he's about to die because he's on Titanic and Titanic died. Because they said not even God can sink this ship. It was a famous statement by one of the constructors of the Titanic. And then God sunk the ship. So if you're on the raft and you're about to die, you call out to Allah with true sincerity. The muttar, أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ أَإِلَهٌ مَعَ اللَّهِ قَلِيلًا مَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. Beautiful ayah. Who answers the call of the muttar? The muttar is the person that's going to die. That's why إِلَّا مَا اضْطَرُرْتُمْ إِلَيْهِ. You're not allowed to eat pig. And you're not allowed to eat a dead carcass. You're not allowed to eat haram, except in one scenario. The one scenario where you eat pig, or you eat something that was not slaughtered Islamically, the one scenario is if you're muttar, if you're on the brink of death. Then the fuqaha, they say you eat in order to stay alive, because killing yourself and suicide is not allowed in Islam. So you eat the pig, but you don't eat the pig until you're full. You eat the pig until you're able to continue living. You eat what is needed. Muttar is the last line of life. When you're in the last line of life and the lion is coming to eat you and you make dua to Allah with true sincerity, that's the best dua to make. And I say this because making dua in any language with sincerity is better than making a dua in Arabic that you do not understand and you just say no, say something in the language that you understand. And dua is a communication with Allah. Dua is talking to Allah, and dua is a beautiful act of worship because dua has no prerequisites and no conditions to it. When you come to pray salah, you have to come with your awrah covered, your nakedness has to be covered, you have to come with wudu, you have to come in a clean garment that doesn't have najasa on it, you have to face the qibla, it has to be in the salah timing. Salah has 6 conditions before you even start. Before you start, there's 6 conditions. Then when you start, there's 12 pillars, and there's like 13 sunan, and salah is condition prerequisite. Dua, no condition, no prerequisite. There's something called adab of dua, which are recommended acts to do as you make dua that make your dua more answered, like wearing, covering yourself properly, facing the qibla, being on wudu. These are all recommended things. Making dua after an act of worship, this is recommended, not obligatory. Because the woman, when she has her menstrual cycle, or the woman when she gives birth to a baby, she goes through a period where she cannot pray salah and she cannot fast because she's bleeding. This woman, can she make dua and still talk to Allah? Of course. Dua is amazing. You could be in a state of janaba, you could be in a state of major ritual impurity and still make dua. So dua is something that we should always be doing. And the greatest dua of all du'ats is the dua you make from your heart. So after salah, you should make it a habit. After any prayer you pray, you should make it a habitual habit to sit down and make dua. And there's no habit that you could get used to unless you force yourself to get used to it. Sometimes you need to train yourself to get used to things. Sometimes you need to train yourself to get used to things. But I always like to say this one example, especially if you come to the mosque and you pray a salah in the mosque, you should not move from your place. Or you should not go on your phone until you make dua for a good minute or two. 5 minutes is the best. The first minute or two doesn't count, because the first minute or two is you trying to get into the groove, because you don't get into the groove immediately. But of course, after an act of worship, it's better to make dua because you're close to Allah. Because you're close to Allah. That's why it's sunnah to make dua when you break your fast, and it's an accepted dua because it's after an act of worship, a very great pious act of worship that's very sincere, which is fasting. So you should get into the habit of making dua, and like I said, in order to get into the habit and to make it easy for yourself, make dua in any language you want. Talk to Allah, just talk to Allah, but talk to Allah with etiquette and adab. You don't just immediately start asking, Ya Allah, I have an exam tomorrow, Ya Allah, please A+ on the exam, Ya Allah, please, I want to get a good job so I can get a good girl and a nice house. No, man. Say, Ya Allah, you are rich and I'm poor. Ya Allah, you're strong and I'm weak. Ya Allah, you are high and I'm low. Ya Allah, you know everything and I know nothing. Ya Allah, your knowledge is infinite and my knowledge is finite. Ya Allah, you're the best. Ya Allah, I love you and you love me. Like, talk nicely to Allah. You can speak nicely. You don't have to learn this. There's nothing to learn. You just talk from your heart. There's nothing to learn. That's what I'm trying to say. Don't follow like a script. It's not nice to follow a script. It's not nice to follow a script. Talk from your heart. Shaykh, what's the best dua to make for an exam? The most common question I get, what's the best dua to make for a girl? I said, go make dua for the girl, brother. So, Ya Allah, grant me the girl. Like, be sincere when you ask. Of course, there's Quranic du'as like we could give that are in regards to certain things, But the best thing to do is to talk to Allah sincerely. And then once you start this habit of habitually making dua or talking to Allah, it becomes very addictive. Because acts of worship are addictive to the believer, the same way haram is addictive to the person with no iman or the non-believer. The same way that someone gets addicted to something addictive in a haram manner, the believer gets addicted to acts of worship because of the good tingling feeling or the nice sensational feeling it grants him. But the sensational, nice, beautiful feeling that you get as a Muslim when you do an act of worship is different than haram, because that feeling lasts longer and it's beautiful, and every time you do it, it's still beautiful, and every time you do it, it's more tasty and more sweet. That's halawat al-iman. That's the sweetness of faith. And if you're gifted this, you're gifted everything in the world. Like if you're gifted a good feeling, you're gifted everything in the world. But you don't make dua for the good feeling, and you don't pray salah for the good feeling, and you don't do acts of worship chasing a feeling. No, the feeling is a good thing you get out of it. That's good. But you do it whether or not you get a good feeling or not. You do it for the sake of Allah, to receive the pleasure of Allah, and then ultimately you're gifted everything good. So all of this was a tangent. All of this was a much needed, nice tangent for us making dua to Allah to not embarrass us. It's a beautiful dua, because people get embarrassed all the time, and it's crazy. Like we said, that Allah does not embarrass from the first time. And there's all these. I was watching about a month ago. There was a guy. His name was Ali something. I don't know if he's Muslim or not. He's probably Muslim. He's from LA. He was a famous TikToker. Ali Boomerang or something. Boomabomb, Ali something. His court case showed up in my YouTube suggested videos, and I'm so happy it showed up because I watched some of it, and the only thing I kept thinking was like Islamic perspective. Like this guy, he got rocked. He got hit so hard with his court case. He lost it, of course, after years. He killed his wife, and it was a very toxic relationship, as any un-Islamic relationship will always be. You'll never find serenity and tranquility in a relationship. You will never find serenity and tranquility in a relationship that was established on haram, or that is haram. You will not. It's impossible. It's not possible to go against the boundary of Allah, yani to sin, to infringe on the boundary of Allah and receive tranquility. It's not possible. But a relationship that's based upon Allah, or has Allah in it, and is a blessed relationship, it will have blessings from Allah, and you'll find serenity and tranquility in it. You will not find serenity and tranquility and comfort in a haram relationship. It's an oxymoron. It cannot happen. No matter what people try to show you on social media of how happy they are, it's a lie. But the believer, he sees through fake, like a doctor sees through a CAT scan. A doctor gives a CAT scan to the person to see through the bone and the stuff. CAT scans are very scary. It's very claustrophobic in there, but inshallah you don't ever have to get a CAT scan. So the believer, he sees through fake, like a doctor sees a CAT scan. Honestly, you don't fall for these fake things. Like this guy Ali Boomerang or Boomabomb or whatever his name was. He got caught, and I was watching the court case. Wallahi, I was watching the court case, and the only thing I kept thinking the entire time was, this is disgusting. It's so fake. Social media is so fake, because he was getting 5 million views for every video he put up with his wife, and they seem like the perfect couple. Of course, that's how they're going to make it seem, because they're going to the nicest restaurants in Los Angeles. They're traveling the world. They're happy on vacation. Of course they're miserable, because if you go on vacation and your wife is on her phone, where's the pleasure in that? Or if you go on vacation and you're on your phone and you're not giving attention to your wife, where's the pleasure in that? It's misery. And they're always chasing clout and likes on social media. And then naturally, because of the nature of social media, guys are going to contact his attractive wife, and girls are going to contact him, and it contacting leads to haram, leads to cheating, which was the reason why he killed her, ultimately, because she was cheating on him, and he cheated on her 100 times. Filth upon filth, upon filth, upon filth. It's filth 4. What's filth 4? Squared? 3? Filth to the 4th. Filth to the 4th. Just filth upon filth upon filth upon filth. And all of this filth accumulates and it leads to murder. And he kills his wife. It was toxic and nasty, but my greatest observation was how embarrassing the courtroom was, because they were going through his messages. He would deny it. Of course, he would deny so much, and then be like, how are you going to deny it? Is this not your message? And then they call it. He denies it, they show a message. He denies it, they show a message. You can't deny the message in front of you. You can't deny the video footage of the hotel or whatever it was. You can't deny it. It's in front of you. So I was thinking to myself, maybe this guy had many opportunities to make amends with Allah, I'm guessing, or to fix it up. He probably had many opportunities that he blew, and now ultimately he got embarrassed. He got embarrassed in this dunya. Very embarrassed, and that's a scary thing. And he got embarrassed in the court of this world. He got embarrassed in the court of this world, in the courthouse in this world in LA. But the greatest embarrassment and the scariest embarrassment is to be embarrassed on Yawm al-Qiyamah and the courtship of Allah. When your judges Allah and the angels, that's the scariest embarrassment ever. So we make dua for Allah to not embarrass us فوق الأرض in this dunya, وتحت الأرض in the hereafter, ويوم العرض عليك, in the day that we're presented to you. Ameen. So now moving forward from what is not Riya, we move forward now from what is not Riya. What was not Riya was what? The first thing was what? Teaching someone something good with a sincere intention, and them acting upon it, and also setting a good example. Setting a good example is not showing off. And also committing a sin in secret, fearing that people would see you. This is a side of Iman. And then the third thing is feeling motivated and energized to do good in the presence of righteous people. And we ended on this note in the last class. Feeling motivated and energized to do good in front of righteous people. This is not showing off. This is good energy that you receive from the pious individual that you're around. And good energy is a real thing. And we talked about this. We talked about this in the last class. It's real. It's something that is real, and it's Islamic. That's why Allah commands us to surround ourselves with good energy. Allah, He says, فَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ وَلَا تَعْدُ عَيْنَاكَ عَنْهُمْ تُرِيدُ زِينَةَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَلَا تُطِعْ مَنْ أَغْفَلْنَا قَلْبَهُ عَنْ ذِكْرِنَا وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ وَكَانَ أَمْرُهُ فُرُطًا. Allah, He says in Surah Al-Kahf, a very beautiful ayah. He says, and exert patience and forbearance and endurance. وَاصْبِرْ. Exert patience. مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ. With those individuals who call out to Allah, بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. They call out to Allah in the morning and at night, seeking the pleasure of Allah. Meaning that there are people that are calling out to Allah all day, because in the morning and at night means all day. Like their whole day is calling out to Allah. Their whole day is filled with Allah. يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. Seeking the pleasure of Allah. Yani they're sincere. Basically, Allah, He says, be patient, but don't be patient by yourself. Be patient in good company. Surround yourself with good company when you're patient, because it uplifts you. That's what Allah is saying. So Allah tells us to do this. So if you feel yourself motivated and energized to do good in the presence of good people, that's not showing off. That's a good thing. This is different than someone seeing you and you being happy to do something in front of them, or you elongating your prayer when someone's watching you. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a good pious person, and inshallah you have examples in your head of good pious people that you look up to. When you're with that person, you feel uplifted to do good because they're all good. So the takeaway is surround yourself with good people and be in the masjid all the time, because in the masjid you'll find good people always. And when you're with good people, you're able to refrain from sinning because you're embarrassed to sin. And you're able to uphold good acts and be steadfast because that person, inshallah, is steadfast as well. And that's why you look up to him. The next thing he speaks about, the author, is degrees of Riya. So now after we spoke about what is not Riya, now we're talking about degrees of Riya, because Riya is not all one. Showing off. Riya is not all one level. There's levels of it. So the first level is completely disregarding Allah's reward, seeking only the approval of people. Category number one. Not worrying about the reward from Allah. So this is the highest level of showing off. This is complete showing off. Completely disregarding Allah's reward, seeking only the approval of people. Yani you're showing off completely mukhlis, 100% mutlaq showing off. You're showing off only for people, not for the sake of, not doing anything for the sake of Allah. What is the conclusion, or what is the reward for this? What is the reward for this riya? What's the opposite of reward? Punishment. What is the punishment for this riya? Does anyone know off the top of their head, logically speaking, just thinking with the brain? What is it? Sister, what are you going to say? What is the conclusion of showing off completely? Who's going to guess it? Yeah? Not getting validation? No, you'll get that if you show off completely. You'll get validation from a lot of people. What's the... No. I think sorry. I think the question is not being understood properly. I'm gonna reword the question. What is the reward for someone who shows off completely? His action is all showing off. It has no sincerity in it. The person that performs an action with no sincerity. What is the reward for that? No reward. That's it. Nullified. Void. The action is void. The action is void. You mean minor shirk, right? Minor shirk, right? Yeah. So completely disregarding Allah's reward, seeking only the approval of people. The reward for this. This is the worst type of riya. This is the worst category of riya. This is the worst kind of riya. And it is a great sin in Allah's eyes. This is a great sin. You perform an act with no sincerity in it. Do you guys understand? You guys understand it? We're talking about the categories of riya. There's 4 categories. Number 1, the right side of the spectrum, the most extreme version, is showing off completely. Like, I don't want anything to do with Allah. I'm doing it all for the girl. I'm doing it all for the guy. I'm doing it all for showing off. You're completely showing off. Do you get reward for completely showing off? No, it's a nullified act. It does not count. Maybe it counts in terms of fiqh, in terms of, yes, you did takbirat al-ihram, you read Quran, you went down and up. Maybe it counts fiqh-wise. But in Allah's reward book, do you get reward? No, because you're showing off. It's a complete act of showing off. That's number 1. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. It does not count, plus you get sin for it. Because showing off is a sin. That's a good point, sorry. Not only doesn't count, you get no reward for this action. It doesn't count. In the book of Allah, it doesn't count, no reward. Plus you get sin for the showing off that you committed. Right? The second category is intending primarily to show off or win acceptance with a secondary intention for reward from Allah. You guys got that? So next one is showing off is more in your intention. Alright? When you perform the act, showing off is more. But you also have an intention to do it for Allah, right? But the primary intention is to show off, with some intention to do it for Allah. This is similar, right, to the first category that we just mentioned, right? Are you guys with me? The first category is 100% showing off. This category, 70 to 80% showing off. 30% doing it for the sake of Allah, right? This is similar to the first kind of riya, and its punishment is going to be similar. It's also very similar to the first category that we just mentioned. But this varies because there's a bit of sincerity in here. There's some sincerity left. So you'll get reward for the little sincerity you have. Third category, third level, is seeking both. Seeking both. Reward and also seeking admiration with the same intensity. So it's a half-half. The first one is completely showing off. Second one is majority showing off. Third one now, third category, is half-half. You are doing it for the sake of Allah, but you're also doing it for the praise and sake of people. So it's 50-50. The conclusion of this is whatever good that this person does is negated by riya. This person may also be accumulating sins with his mixed intentions. Your intention is completely mixed. It's completely mixed. So whatever good that you do, it's negated by the riya. And the person may also be accumulating sins. And this is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that was a hadith Qudsi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أَنَا أَغْنَى الشُّرَكَاء مِنَ الشِّرْكِ. I am the most, Allah says in the hadith Qudsi, I am the most independent of any partner. Allah is free, the most free from any partner. Whomsoever does an action intending my pleasure and the pleasure of another, the action will be left for the other. I am free of such an action. You guys understand? So if you have a 50-50 intention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, I'm free from the action. You intended me and someone else along with me. جعلت شركاء مع الله. جعلت شريكا مع الله. This is not shirk as in worshipping other than Allah, of course, because you're not worshipping an idol. No, you're worshipping Allah, but your intention is half-half exactly. You added someone with the equation of Allah, it's not accepted. The fourth one is feeling encouraged by the admiration and presence of people. The fourth type of riya is the most common one, I would say. Inshallah, we're not in the first three. The fourth one is feeling encouraged by the admiration and presence of people. Knowing that an audience is watching you makes the performance much easier. You guys see what? Remember we talked about this? When we were talking about showing off in the first class, we said the guy, he's reading Quran, and then he hears someone entering because the old church has flooring, wood flooring. You always hear everything in Masjid Yunus. So when you hear the guy walking behind you, you start reading more Quran and louder. This is showing off. You were motivated to do more because you heard someone is watching you. This is the most common type. This is the guy praying sunnah in the masjid, and the other two guys come and he makes his sunnah elongated. You guys with me? But at home he prays and he burps when he prays and he looks at his stomach when he prays at home. He barely makes sujood at home. You understand? Feeling encouraged by the audience and intention of people, knowing that people are watching you makes the performance so much easier. They will be rewarded, this category will be rewarded according to his level of sincerity, and they will be punished according to how eager they sought the approval of people. In other words, their reward will be dependent on the amount of sincerity in the action, and their punishment depending on the amount of showing off they did in the action. So it varies. Now, how is riya judged by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There's an action that's completely insincere. The action, this is just basically reiterating what we just said, because we gave 4 categories and we said the conclusion of each category. The fourth and final category was what? Feeling encouraged when people are watching you. We said that due to the sincerity that you have, you get rewarded inshallah, and with the insincerity that you have, you get punished. So now, how is riya judged by Allah? The first thing that we say is complete insincere action. Action completely insincere. We mentioned this already, right? It is rejected by Allah, so it is nullified and void. And a sin takes its place on the scale, like Umar said. A sin takes the place of this act. It's not an act with a reward, it's a sin, because it was completely insincere. The second one was the one with the shaky intention. Yani it began with an intention of pleasing Allah, but then it was overtaken by riya. It began with an intention of seeking the pleasure of Allah, but then it was overtaken by riya. This one is judged by Allah with His infinite wisdom, and we expand on this. This is judged by Allah with His infinite wisdom. So if you battled your whispers of riya, this is natural. So everyone's going to get whispers, right, to show off. So now you're going to battle. This is constant battles. That's why we said in the beginning of the class, we renew our intention. Because perhaps on your way here you were sincere. Then on your way here you thought of something that made you a little insincere. This is a battle, constant battle. So if you battled your whispers of riya and defeated them, then you will be rewarded. You're going to get more reward for the battle that you have with your insincere intention. You understand? Because this is more exertion of effort. And we said the more effort you exert in anything, the more rewarding it is. Does that make sense? So you'll be rewarded for the striving to improve yourself in addition to the original intention that you intended. Your original intention that you have reward for it. Then on top of that, you're battling your nafs. So you're also rewarded for that battle, that internal battle. You're rewarded for it because it's more effort. So, however, on the flip side, if you give in to your riya, then it is hoped that you will be rewarded for whatever part of the action that you did sincerely for the sake of Allah. You get it? If riya overtakes you, inshallah, you get reward for that part of the action that was sincere, and you will receive no reward for what you spoiled with a bad intention. Instead, you will be punished for that and you will receive sin. 3, sincere, but later you told people about it. How does Allah judge this? So the first one was completely insincere, it's nullified. The second one was a shaky intention, we just explained it, alright? The third one is sincere, but you later told people about it. Who's going to answer this before we say it? Common sense. You did it sincerely. You didn't do it showing off. But later on, you went and you told someone about this act. What would you say? It's a trick question. Huh? It's nullified? Why? When you did it, you were sincere. Huh? Go on. Yeah, you're not completely wrong. You're half-half. You're not completely wrong. So it depends on what your intention was when you told someone about it. It depends on what your intention was when you told someone about it. It depends on the circumstance. If your intention in informing someone was to deliberately win their acceptance and their veneration and their admiration and their praise, the action is not rejected, but the reward decreases immensely. And if you were pleased when they found out about it, which is not like you telling them, you being pleased when someone found out about something you did. This is natural. You're a human being, right? You're going to feel emotions. So you did something nice, mashallah. And then someone found out. So then they go and they say, oh, Shaykh Ismail, I saw you there, whatever you're doing. Or brother Mahmoud, I saw you. Or Ahmed, I saw you doing this and that. Mashallah, brother, mashallah. Good job, brother. So this is not... If you were pleased when people found out about something, it's not nullified, nor is the reward decreased as long as you did not intentionally seek their praise. This is not in your control. As long as you did not intentionally seek their praise, inshallah, there's nothing wrong with that. However, a reminder to all of us, you should not be excited. And I say this 100 times, and I emphasize this point. You should not be excited that people are admiring your actions. You should be, however, hopeful that this is a sign that your deed was accepted. I want to say this again. You should not be excited. Of course, naturally, you're going to feel a bit of excitement, and we just said that's fine. It doesn't do anything to your action. It was not your intention for him to see it, and he saw it. You got a little gassed. You got a little happy. No problem, brother. Be happy. But I want to say to all of you, you should not be excited. You should not be excited by the praise or admiration of people, because you understand that everyone is going to pass away one day. It doesn't matter what they think. You know yourself, and you know your shortcomings. You understand? You guys got it? Like, you know your own self and you know your shortcomings. You should not be too excited that people are admiring you. Rather, you should be hopeful that this is a sign that your deed was accepted from Allah. And this is from a hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, أَرَأَيْتَ الرَّجُلَ يَعْمَلُ الْعَمَلَ مِنَ الْخَيْرِ وَيَحْمَدُهُ النَّاسُ عَلَيْهِ قَالَ تِلْكَ عَاجِلُ الْبُشْرَ الْمُؤْمِنِ. This is a beautiful hadith. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said, do you see a man, or what do you think of a man who does a good deed, he performs a good act, and people praise him for that. They start to praise him for that. The Prophet ﷺ said that these are the early good news or glad tidings of a believer, meaning that this is a sign of acceptance. If people are praising you for something that you did and it was not your intention to receive praise, inshallah, this is a sign that your action was accepted by Allah. Tilka ajilu bushra al-mu'min. Tilka ajilu bushra al-mu'min. That there is a good sign of or good news for a believer. So now, to finish the chapter of Riya, we finish with the best way, and that's how do we fight off Riya, or how do we combat Riya. There was a sister that asked this 2 weeks ago, and I told her we're going to expand on it. She's not here today, it's okay. So we answered it briefly to her, but we're going to expand on this. So now, ending the chapter, we conclude the chapter with every chapter of this book is going to be a common theme with how to fight it, because that's the whole point of purification of the heart and soul. We talked about this. We talked about it. It's to locate the issue, to find the problem, to detect, what is it? What's the good word? When you go check up on a doctor. Huh? No, I want to diagnose. Yes. Who said that? Who said that? No, it matters. I want to know. No, I want to give him candy. I had candy. I forgot it in my office. I forgot it. It's halal too. No, that's perfect. You want to diagnose. Diagnose. You want to diagnose the problem. You want to diagnose the marad. First is diagnosis. You go for the diagnosis. So now you're diagnosed. May Allah protect us from all illnesses. So you diagnose the issue, you find it, you locate the problem. First chapter showing off. So after we diagnose or find or locate the problem, we talk about it from the Quran and Sunnah aspect that we're going to do in every chapter for everything, because these are all mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah. It's Islam. Those are our sources of religion for everything we do. And then after that, we want to talk about the types of it and talk about it extensively. And then after that, at the very end, we conclude with, so how do we fix it, and what is the medication or what is the prescription to combat this diagnosis or this problem. The same way you go to the pharmacy after getting diagnosed with something from the doctor to combat the physical ailment that you have, and you take medication for heartburn or whatever it is to fix your problem. The same way here, we try to fix our spiritual ailments, and our spiritual ailments and our imani ailments are much more important for us to look after than physical ailments. Of course, they're both important. Of course, being healthy physically is important, but the health of your heart is the most important, because if your heart dies, your body dies as well. And if your heart is healthy, your body is healthy as well. So how do we combat Riya? The first thing, and this is going to be common, I think the author, he starts off combating every problem with the same thing, and that's to have knowledge, to have knowledge of the sin, to understand that Riya is haram. This is knowledge of the sin, you understand? Knowing that's a bad thing, then knowing the types of it, you understand? What we talked about, Having knowledge of Riya is the first thing. So what do we mean by knowledge? Know the consequence and punishment of insincerity and showing off. As we just mentioned in detail, it will render your action void and it will give you sin. So it's sinful and it's one of the major sins. Knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, also not under knowledge, knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one whose pleasure is worth working for. And only with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will you find complete solace, peace of mind and acceptance. This is so beautiful. This is so beautiful. Know very well that one day you're going to pass away. Have knowledge that when you die, nothing is going to avail you. No praise from any human is going to help you in the grave. When that person praised you for what you did, it's not going to help you in your grave. But the acceptance of Allah and the pleasure of Allah is going to help you in your grave. When someone does something sincerely for Allah, we talked about this in the first week. Wallahi, we talked about this so much. You find so much comfort in your heart because you do not care about the outcome of what people think of you. You do not care. Once you reach this level of not caring, you win everything. Wallahi, you win everything. You win happiness and you're always comfortable and content because no matter what the outcome is, you're going to be happy because you know Allah saw you. This is so beautiful, by the way. You have to understand this. When you seek the pleasure of people, when you volunteer for the masjid in Ramadan, so you could seek the pleasure of people and then you don't receive the pleasure of people, or someone criticizes you, you feel crushed. Because you were insincere, brother, you're going to be crushed always because people will always crush you. People will always let you down. Allah never lets you down. Allah never lets you down. Allah never lets you down. Allah is forever and everlasting. Allah is merciful. Allah never lets you down. You will always be let down by people, no matter how close that person is to you. Your wife, your mother, your husband, your son, whoever it is, a human being will let you down. A human being will let you down. Especially a person that's not an immediate family member, of course. You'll be let down by humans your whole life. Know very well that it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one you should intend or to seek acceptance from. And once you do that, like I just said, you'll live free. You live rent free up here. But you don't live rent free up here if you're always thinking about people. It's a miserable life. It's a miserable life. It's a miserable life. So understand that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant you comfort and ease in your heart. And the pleasure of people you'll never receive. You'll never, first of all, when you seek to please people, no one will ever fully be pleased with you. Like you can't get everyone to be pleased with you. Someone's always going to have an issue. And you'll always be miserable. The second thing is to implement action. You need to work and to take steps on canceling showing off. To avoid showing off. So first thing is knowing the gravity of it, knowing it's a sin, knowing there's no good in it. The second thing is to implement the appropriate measures and steps to avoid showing off. First thing is to make dua to Allah, to grant you sincerity. And we make dua to Allah to grant us sincerity when we start every class. And we say it in English. Because dua could be in Chinese and Allah accepts it. It's all about sincerity. It's all about sincerity. So we constantly make dua for Allah to grant you ikhlas. And the more you make dua for something, wallahi, it shows that you really want it. And the more you knock on Allah's door, the more of a chance that you will get it. But of course, when you make dua for something, you also work on attaining it. Because you make dua to do good on the MCAT, but you don't sit down and sleep and not study for the MCAT. You go and you lose all your hair, you get bald spots, and you get gray hair studying for the MCAT, stress and back spasms. Then they make you wait a whole month of stress to get your result, and you get the result, and you do bad. Or you do good, whatever. What happens? It's qadr Allah. That's all good. As long as you put in effort and make dua. So make dua, seek refuge in Allah from insincerity, yani. Be sincere in your dua and constantly make dua to Allah to be sincere and to be from the people who are sincere and to surround you with people who are sincere. And the second piece of advice, or the second action that you do, or action item that you do, is to be persistent in battling and reforming your frame of mind. I cannot emphasize this more. I started this class off, this Tazkiyah class, the first class I told you all an intimate story about one of my closest friends that I met in Egypt. Does anyone remember that story? He was a Tunisian brother. His name was Fahmi Hashama. I told you all that he was a very sincere brother. I lived with him. So, of course, sincerity is in the eyes of Allah, but there's signs of sincerity. Like, there's signs. Like, we're not naive either. Like, I hate someone saying, oh, brother, how do you know he's sincere? Brother, there's signs. Relax. There's signs, man. There's signs that someone's showing off. There's signs. It comes off nasty. It smells bad. You see it from a mile away. You see the guy put up a live stream of every time he leads salah and he elongates his prayer. It's annoying. It's so annoying. It's such a turn-off. And sometimes a person is so heedless, it's disgusting. His heedlessness is such a turn-off. The guy leads so long in Isha, there's two people behind him, he's annoying everyone. He makes no one want to come to the masjid. because he wants to show off. Then he shares it on his Facebook, and he shares it again the next day. He double shares it. Then he changes the title. It's so obvious. So we're not naive. Like, of course, Allah knows at the end, of course, but you're not naive as well. And there's signs, there's telltale signs, like large signs that someone's sincere, and there's large signs that someone is insincere. This brother Fahmi from Tunis, he's an amazing individual. With his story, we could understand the second point, which is to be persistent in battling and reframing your frame of mind. This is the internal conflict that we're speaking about, or the constant daily renewal of intention. Or every time you go to the masjid, you remind yourself why you're going. And we said this, and I want to be very clear here, and that this constant battle should not stop you. What's another word for stop you? Should not prevent you. Should not prevent you from going to the masjid or doing any acts of good. Like, of course, having an internal conflict with sincerity means that you're sincere, inshallah. But it should not prevent you from going to the masjid. You say, no, I'm not going to go to the masjid because I'm not sincere. This is shaitanic, bro. Like, overcome the shaitan. Go to the masjid, but fight your intention. Constantly remind yourself why you do things. Constantly remind yourself that one day you're going to pass away, and you doing something for the pleasure of people will never avail you. So, like I said, that brother Fahmi from Tunis, every day I would walk out from the house to go take a bus. He would say, where are you going? Every day. Every day. Maybe back then I was 20 years old, I didn't understand. Maybe I'm thinking, yo, does he forget? Every day he's asking me where I'm going? No, he does not forget. He knows exactly where I'm going. He's trying to, in a nice, wise way, with hikmah, remind me to be sincere. Because he doesn't want to keep telling me annoyingly, be sincere, be sincere. He's not saying I'm not sincere. That's not what he's saying. He's not trying to say I'm insincere. That's not what he's saying. What he's trying to say is, Ismail, you left your family in America. Make sure you don't ruin everything you're doing in Egypt because you're insincere. You're going to go take a bus for an hour to go read to a Shaykh an hour away. Make sure you don't ruin or avoid your action because you're insincere. He goes, where are you going? I go, Quran class. He goes, where? I tell him, Hayl Ashir. He goes, why are you going? I was like, what? To memorize the Quran. And then he goes, Jaddid niyatuka, like renew your intention every day, every day, every day. So one day I told you guys I got sick of him. So I went up to him, I'm like, what do you mean Jaddid niyatuka? What are you talking about, bro? He goes, no, like renew your intention. Like you go, make sure your intention is pure. Yani. I go, what is a pure intention? He goes, to do it for the sake of Allah. Yani. To memorize the Quran for the sake of Allah, not to show off to people. To memorize the Quran to come closer to Allah. To memorize the Quran and to learn anything to remove ignorance from yourself. We want to remove ignorance from ourselves, right? The third one is to do acts of worship in secret, aka to worship Allah in secret. This is probably the greatest thing you could do. This is probably the greatest thing you can implement or do. This is probably the greatest thing you could do or implement to fix your insincerity. Is to perform secret acts of worship. To do secret acts of worship constantly. Secret acts of worship is like you have a public act of worship, which is salah in the masjid. And there's times and places for everything. We mentioned this in detail. There's times and places for everything, but you should also have a qist min al-ibadah fi sir. You should also always have a portion of worship in secret. Not everything you should do is always public, because coming to the masjid is a very, very virtuous act for the man. We mentioned this. Every man should come to the masjid as much as he can, but this is public. Coming to the masjid is a public act. Walking in the masjid is a social act. A form of a private salah is praying at home in your room when no one knows you're praying. So you should implement acts of worship that are private. If you read Quran, or people can see you read Quran at home, giving sadaqah in a secret manner. Giving sadaqah in a secret manner. Whatever it is that you do publicly, you could do privately as well. The greatest private act of worship known to mankind, and the most rewarding act of worship, because the reward for fasting is hidden. الصوم لي وأنا أجزي به. كل عملي ابن آدم له إلا الصيام فإنه لي وأنا أجزي به. In the Hadith Qudsi, Allah says that every action the son of action acts upon and does, everything the person does is for him, except for fasting, it's for me. Yani Allah, He venerates fasting. He raises the status of fasting so much, and He says, I will reward it accordingly. This individual, he left off his desire, he left off eating and drinking for my sake. It's for me, and I will reward it accordingly. The reason why fasting is so immense in its reward, and its reward is hidden until we meet Allah, is because it's so sincere. Fasting, you could fast and not let anybody know you're fasting. You could keep it sincerely between you and Allah. You could fast and be invited out for lunch, and you could say, no, I'm just not feeling, I ate, or you could say whatever. You could say, I'm not feeling like it, or whatever. You don't have to say, oh, I'm fasting, brother. You don't have to say, oh, I'm fasting. I'm fasting, my head hurts. I wish I could eat, but I'm fasting. I'm complaining all the time. In Ramadan, you ask someone how he's doing, like, how's the fast going? And he's just miserable. So many people are miserable. This is low level of fasting. We want high level of fasting. We want to be happy when we worship Allah. We want to be happy. So worship Allah in secret, have secret acts of worship. And then constantly remind yourself of the punishment of Riya. Remind yourself constantly of the punishment of Riya. One second. Constantly remind yourself that it's not worth it to be insincere. And we end off the chapter of Riya by saying the famous ayah in Surah Al-Ra'd, إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will not change the state of a people. He will not change the state of people. Allah will not change the state of a people until they change the state of their own selves. Meaning that you have to implement change in yourself before Allah could change you. You will not find change until you put in an implementation of trying to stop it or trying to change it. And that goes with anything. And there's many addictions that people have. You cannot stop an addiction until you try to implement a stop. You have to initiate stop. You have to try to stop. You have to try to quit. You have to go see a therapist. You have to go see a specialist. You have to make tawbah. You have to make dua to give you the ability to stop. So with that, we conclude the chapter of Riya. And we'll leave the floor open now to questions. We'll start with the sister now. Go on, go ahead. No, go ahead, please. So I wanted to say this is the whole reason why it's secret, because you could avoid answering the question. You could be vague. You don't have to say I'm going to be at home praying Qiyam al-Layl. You could say I'm going to go home, I'm tired, I want to sleep. Like you don't have to answer directly. You could No, I think this is in public, so it wouldn't be private. No, but like if you're doing something in private, it's something you could conceal. You don't have to answer. Like you don't have to say, I'm going home so I could pray. You could say I'm going home to watch TV. You could say that if you want. You don't have to say that, but lying here would be allowed. Like if you want to avoid telling someone about your act, but you don't have to lie. You don't have to even do that. You could just be vague. Right? No? Oh, really? Yeah, so you don't have to tell them you're coming here. You could say you're busy, right? No, right? No, I understand, because I also like to volunteer information as well. But then I met a friend of mine in Egypt. I used to always ask him where he was. He goes, I'm Mawjood, I'm available. I was like, yo, where are you? Mawjood. He's I'm available. I was like, what does that mean? Where are you? He goes, I'm in Egypt. I'm like, I know, bro, where are you? He goes, Cairo. He was always vague. He never told me what he was doing ever. I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, I'm busy. And I was like, one day I opened up to him. I was like, bro, you ask me where I am, I tell you the exact address I am, and I tell you what I'm doing immediately. I'm like, oh, I'm here, I'm eating. Where are you? I'm like, why don't you ever tell me anything? And he told me a story. This is just to help you and me. Wallah, I love volunteering information, because maybe we're nice and we like to tell people where you are, so you don't have people worry about you. Where are you? Oh, I'm at Kentucky Fried Chicken eating chicken. I got the number 4. It comes with 4-piece chicken and hash browns. You know, you don't have to. You don't have to. You don't have to say that. You don't have to say that. You just say, I'm busy. This guy, my best friend, I met him, and every time I would ask him, where are you? He always says, I'm here. Wallahi, he got me so mad. I'm like, what does that mean? Where are you? I would keep saying, where are you? He goes, in the masjid. He never gave info. So one time I was telling him, I'm like, yo, you're so annoying. I was like, Inta muzaj, bro, what's wrong with you? You never answer anything I ask you. You make everything like up in the air. And then he smiled. He was awkward for him, so he smiled. And he goes, yeah. I go, yes. I go, why? He goes, one day I was very young. It's such a beautiful story, wallahi. Such a beautiful story. He goes, one day I was very young. Of course, he had many siblings. He was from a country that was a poor country, and they're common to have a lot of kids. His dad was a Shaykh, and his dad used to teach Quran. His dad was a Quran teacher, Quran muhaffidh. And they were eating one day. Of course, they would eat as a family. They would all share one big, massive thing of food, him and his 10 siblings, I guess, and his whoever was there. So he got a phone call from one of his friends as he was eating the food with his family. You don't have to tell your friend, I'm eating with my family. You don't have to say that. So he answered the phone in front of his father. His father was very strict. He answered the phone in front of his father, and he said, Wa alaikum salam. He goes, I'm good, I'm here, I'm eating with my family. And his dad slapped him like that, boom. He slapped him really hard, and he said, what the hell are you doing? Don't ever, what are you saying? Don't ever say that ever again. People don't have food to eat. What are you saying? He told him, what are you saying? Like, why are you volunteering information? You don't have to tell him you're eating. He said, from that day forward, he said, I cannot volunteer information. I cannot. I can't. Since that day, I guess he was traumatized. We call it trauma in America, but we call it we call it adab over there. We call it good etiquette, teaching good manners. He taught him well. Wallahi, we call it trauma here, and over there we call it adab, good etiquette, having good etiquette. He taught his son good etiquette. He told him, don't ever tell people what you're doing. Like, what's wrong with you? Or eating? What if the guy is hungry? Like, what if the guy is hungry that you're talking to? So I guess he was hurt from that encounter. He said, after that, I could never ever, I cannot volunteer info. I can't, because of what happened with my dad. I can't. But it got me thinking about myself, because I never answered someone except I gave him like a 4-page essay of what I was doing. I always give info because I feel like I have to give info. No, you don't have to give info. It comes off as dry and mean, but sometimes you do it when you want to save your intention, I guess. You know, you could be dry and mean. I'm good. How are you? Good. Alhamdulillah. Where are you? I'm here. I'm good. What are you doing? I'm busy. You don't have to say like what you're doing. Like, oh, I'm going to Shaykh Ismail's class to attend the Tazkiyah class so I can purify my heart. No, that's very good. We said that that's not a form of insincerity, but you have to be sincere, knowing you're sincere. That was a condition of that. That's very good. No, that's great. No, we should be doing that. But she said that, like, for example, this is her thing, her secret thing, that she attends classes, for example. So she doesn't have to call people out to come here. Or she knows that her friends won't come. I know that, like, I could tell someone, like, some people, they don't have any wisdom. Like, you tell, like, someone always tells me, oh, what, did you ask him to come? No, brother, I'm not going to ask him to come. Like, I'm not going to bother him. Because then he sees me, and every time he sees me, he's going to be like, this guy's annoying. Like, and then he's going to avoid me. No, I don't want him to avoid me. I'm never going to ask him to come. I'm going to say, hey, bro, what's up? How are you? What you doing? Like, I'm going to start a conversation with him. Then I'm going to go. He knows where I'm going. I don't have to tell him. No, but if your friend circle is good friends and this, that, and they like to come to these things, no, of course, invite them to come. Of course, the 100%, that's great. And inshallah, you get the reward for all of them. And even sharing a link to a video. Like, when you guys share a link to a video, you say, watch this video because your intention is to share it for them to benefit. This is an amazing thing to do. What are you going to say? Oh. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah, I get it. So you first off started sincerely? Mm-hmm. Okay. Good. Oh, he feeds the cat. Mm-hmm. No, I think so. Of course, ultimately, when we talk about reward and punishment, it's what is presumed to be the case because Allah ultimately is gonna get, but it's based upon concrete, like evidence is what we think is gonna happen. So what we presume is gonna happen, what we presume the outcome it is thought that Allah would accept this or Allah. So based upon that, I'm gonna say I believe 100% that if you sincerely repent and ask Allah to clear your intentions and and to fix it, then it would count sincerely. But I want to say something here. And this is something really good. He's mentioning this now. He's like, oh, because I came to the class and perhaps we heard something that made me double think of an intention I had when I told people. This is really good. This is a good thing to have. Constant conflict in your nafs, constantly fighting and battling your intention is a very good sign. I want to keep saying that again and again. It shows that you're on the road to sincerity and it shows that you are sincere. When you're battling or constantly thinking about your intentions, it's a good thing. We said it only becomes a bad thing when it how do you say stops you? Prevents you. When it prevents you from doing a good act. You should never reach the point where your internal whispers prevent you from doing something good. You should not reach that point. That means shaitan is winning because shaitan wants you to constantly have waswas. You don't want, no, having whispers and fighting internal conflict of this and that. But I think it's a nice thing if you want to encourage people to do good. It's a good thing, depending on the circumstance and the scenario, of course. Any other questions? We never give time for questions, and I was going to rush to start the second chapter, but I might as well just answer questions for the next 5 minutes. Oh yeah, which? Allahumma la tafdahna. Oh Allah, do not embarrass us. فوق الأرض وتحت الأرض ويوم العرض عليك. Oh Allah, do not embarrass us over the ground, yani in dunya, when we're alive, and under the ground when we pass away, and the day we're presented to you. No problem. So we were going to start the second chapter today, but I believe you guys are tired, right? We can save it for the next time, right? Right? So to be honest, I didn't prepare for this one. This was just to complete. I prepared for this one for 4 hours today, but it's okay. We'll use the prep for next class. But we give a little prelude. We'll give a prelude. Oh yeah, we're going to do that after we finish the books are here today. So the next class we're going to be speaking about ghiba. Ghiba is backbiting. Let me just give the definition of it. I was excited to talk about it. I was really excited to talk about it. We'll talk about it next week, but I'm going to give the intro. Ghiba is to say something about your brother in his absence that he would dislike. Again, the definition of ghiba is to say something about your brother in his absence that he would dislike. Again, backbiting, aka ghiba, is to say something about your brother or your sister, of course, in his absence that he would dislike. It doesn't mean that you're lying about him. That's slandering someone. You got that? Slandering is the next chapter after backbiting. So ghiba could also be ghiba can also be a gesture, any gesture that is meant to demean someone, such as rolling of the eyes, or mocking someone when their attention is diverted, or writing about someone, or anything similar to that. Do you guys get that? So sometimes you're with a group of people, and it's not very nice for someone to talk in front of you that's like not as sharp as you maybe, or he's making a stupid comment, or he doesn't seem as bright as you, or whatever it is. And then you do that with your eyes, mocking him. So ghiba doesn't have to be something that you say. It could also be an act that you do, or something you write when someone is not paying attention. So we notice from the definition of ghiba, we realize from the definition of ghiba that it's not to lie upon someone. It's just to mention anything. It could be factual, it could be true. To mention anything in the absence of an individual, to mention anything in the absence of an individual that he would not like. And of course this is mentioned in the Quran and in the Sunnah, and this is mentioned in Surah Al-Hujurat, وَلَا يَغْتَبْ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا أَيُحِبُّ أَحَدُكُمْ أَن يَأْكُلَ لَحْمَ أَخِيهِ مَيْتًا فَكَرِهْتُمُوهُ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ تَوَّابٌ رَحِيمٌ. And do not backbite each other. Would any of you like to eat the flesh of their dead brother? You would despise that and fear Allah, and indeed Allah is accepting of repentance and merciful. So inshallah we'll talk about this topic next week in detail, which is ghiba, which is to backbite someone. Backbiting is the second ailment that he brings from the ailments that we have to work on after seeking admiration and riya. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from riya and showing off. Inshallah we have a good holistic understanding of riya. And even if we don't, go on. So that's a good question. She said, no, so first and foremost, showing off is generally bad. To show off is bad in general, but we were speaking specifically about acts of worship, which is hereafter lens, because reward in sin. Showing off your car in an arrogant manner would be arrogance. So showing off something that you have in an arrogant way is arrogance. So you receive the sin of showing off to look down upon someone, and you receive the sin of being arrogant. You get that? So there was a common custom that the Arab used to do before the Prophet ﷺ in Jahiliyyah and during Islam as well, and that was to drag their robe, to drag the thobe, which is why there's many ahadith in regard to shortening your thobe, your garment. There's many ahadith, but one of the ahadith that's narrated is man jarra thawbahu khuyala'a fama tahta al-ka'bi or ka'bayni fi an-nari. Whomsoever dragged his garment, his thobe, right? Whomsoever dragged his garment under his ankles, and it dragged like on the floor, so whatsoever is under the ankles is in the hellfire, meaning that it's a very sinful act to drag your thobe. But in this hadith, the Prophet said khuyala, he gave the reasoning behind it. The reason or the intention of doing so was to show off or out of arrogance. Khuyala is to do something out of arrogance and pride and vanity. So back then, people were poor, and people didn't have enough money to get a nice custom thobe that was long, so it would be short because they were poor, right? But of course, if you have money to spend and splurge, you could get a long thobe. So the most arrogant thing in the world to do is to buy a really long thobe, to just drag it in front of all the poor people. Because you're dragging the silk garment in the dirt and dust. You're showing how rich you are. Like, I'm so rich, I have money to blow. And you're poor. So this is a very detestable act. It's haram, it's sinful, it's kibr. Kibr is haram, showing off is haram, right? But now, of course, in today's world, and this is why the fuqaha, they all mention, and Imam Nawawi mentions this, and he mentions this in Riyadh al-Salihin as well. He mentions that if someone has a garment that goes below his ankle in today's world, in today's context, and his intention is not to show off. Nowadays, I would say it's the opposite. If someone has a large garment, it means he doesn't have money to go shorten it by the tailor. No one drags their thobe today to show off. So they say if someone has a garment that goes to his ankles or under his ankles in today's world, and his intention is not to show off, there's no sin in that. But today's example, as she was saying, today's modern day example of doing that, and it takes the same place as that, is showing off with anything. That's expensive, like having a nice car and being obnoxious and annoying. Like 90% of the people on Hilden Avenue, we're in the masjid and we're in sujood, and the masjid starts to bump and like go crazy because of the guy blasting his annoying music outside. Inconsiderate human. So he gets a sin for being inconsiderate, and he gets a sin for being arrogant. But what matters if he's not Muslim? Sin and good deed don't matter. Jahannam is the Nasir. No, like it's annoying. That is showing off. Showing off is haram 100%. Showing off in dunya. Showing off about anything. It brings us to social media and posting pictures on social media. Of course, it's based upon your intention. But I would strongly advise you, like my friend's father that slapped him, not to talk about what you're doing so much. And that goes for also taking pictures and posting them on social media, because if my friend's father saw him post a picture on Instagram, he would have beat him too. Like, all jokes aside, like it depends on your intention. If your intention is to show off and to show people that like, look at me, I'm eating such nice food. But sometimes people, honestly, they share it with a sincere intention. They just share it because they like the food, it looks nice or something. It's okay. But you shouldn't share pictures of food, honestly. I don't think it's a good idea to share pictures of food, because not everyone can afford the food you're eating. And not everyone can eat what you're eating. And sometimes someone is going to see something you post, and in their heart, sometimes they can't control the state of the heart, and they start to give you envy, even without intending it, because they wish they could be there, or they wish they could be with a spouse or a husband or whatever in a relationship that you're in or whatever, and it brings problems to yourself. Many people receive evil eye and envy and hasad without even realizing it, due to things that they post on the internet. And I want to give an example. I was in Egypt. I was about 23, 24 years old. There was a Bengali brother. He was a student of knowledge in Al-Azhar. He was in his 4th year. He was he was older than me. He was about 30 something. He was Bengali. So he had a family there, his wife and his 2 children, his 3 kids. And one time we were in the masjid for Maghrib or Isha, and he's like, let's go eat. So we went out to eat, and we were fighting over the bill. And the seating areas in Egypt are not always inside a restaurant. You guys got me? It's not always inside. There's an outdoor seating area because the weather is nice in Egypt. So you sit outside, and sometimes the restaurant is small. So outdoors, free sidewalk, you put on the sidewalk. So I took the food out to go eat outside because the weather was nice. After Isha, the weather is nice. And perhaps there's going to be cats that come. We could throw the bones to the cats, whatever. So he said, no, Shaykh, let's take it home or something. I was like, what do you mean take it home? It's hot now. We eat now. American mindset, American. He goes, no. Do you know how many poor people there are outside? Maybe someone's going to pass by and see us eating, and they're going to want to eat. It's not right to eat in front of people. I was like, oh, he's right. I never thought about that. I was like, oh, subhanAllah, I never thought about that. He's like, well, let's eat inside. So we went inside to eat in the cramped restaurant, and we sweat a lot because it was hot. But we sat in the back so no one saw us. And I never thought about that. I never thought about that in my life until he mentioned this. Then every single time I ever ate after that encounter, I always thought, like, I don't want to eat outside and the people see me eating and they can't afford it, and like, it's not right. You're eating chicken and rice. In Egypt, who can afford chicken and rice? Maybe 40% of the people or 20% of the people can afford chicken and rice. Some people in Egypt eat meat once every year on the day of Eid when they're gifted meat by someone. You don't see this stuff in America because we're blessed beyond measure. We don't understand this. Like, but in Bangladesh, in India, in Egypt, they see this stuff every year. On the day of Eid in Egypt, Eid al-Adha is when you do the adahi, right? When you sacrifice the sheep or the goat or the camel. It's from the sunnah to give 1/3 to the poor. So there's lines. You know what a line is? There's lines. You know what a line is? Lines that go on for miles. I'm not saying like a line of 50 people. I'm saying line of people in the middle, because over there the roadway is like this way and this way. The roadway is like 3 lanes going up and 3 lanes coming down, and in the middle there's like a little janana, there's like a little garden. For 20 miles of people that come from the village just to get meat from the people of Cairo, because the people of Cairo are people that can afford to do udhiyah. So after everyone does their udhiyah, you see them going and handing out bags of meat to these poor village ladies that are sitting from the night before in the middle of the highway. And this is something I was shocked at. And then my teacher was telling me, oh, that's probably the only time they're going to eat meat. They're going to taste meat all year. Meat is expensive here. It's so and so. So be very wary of what you post. And yeah, of course, showing off, dunya-wise, also counts as showing off, and it's haram. Any other questions? Yeah? Yeah. 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 No, honestly, I'm gonna say, like, it depends on your intention ultimately, of course. But of course, you're a father and you're gonna be proud of your son. It's like natural sometimes to say things like, it's natural, like, oh, alhamdulillah, you know. But like, of course, you say something like, oh, alhamdulillah, so and so, your son's name is, you know, he's going to the masjid, he has good friends, and they go to the masjid together. I ask Allah to keep him steadfast and guided. Like, it's up to you. But I don't think there's anything wrong with saying something like that. What? You gonna say something? Well, I'm with you. Oh, no, I don't think there's something wrong with saying something like that, but I think to end it up with a dua, or you say to the person you talk to, make dua, that Allah keeps him steadfast and guided. But I think a parent being happy for his son or daughter being good and upright is natural. And all the examples I can think of in my head, of every parent I've ever met, when his kid was good, the first thing he would tell me is, oh, Shaykh, he's good. He goes to the masjid. So I think there's nothing wrong with that. Make dua for him. I think the appropriate thing would to end it with a dua, you making dua, but also, of course, engraving in your son and your daughter the importance of sincerity, because you create like a little devil or a little tyrant when you constantly praise your son. Don't praise your son. You could praise your son to people, but don't praise your son, because then arrogance is formulated. You have someone that he makes his son memorize the Quran and he keeps telling everyone, my son, this, that, Quran, this, that, and he bigs up his son, and his son is so puffed up by arrogance. The whole point of the Quran is gone. No, you should be a little tough on your kids. You know, of course you could be good, you know, but there has to be a balance. I'm saying there has to be a balance. And I'm saying this so you don't destroy the sincerity of your child. You know, like you be like a little extra stoic with the kid, but of course you could talk to your friends and family about your happiness for him being good. And I say this from experience. My father, I don't think he ever in his life praised me to my face ever. And it hurts, but it's good. I think it was good for me. Because I know he doesn't hate me, because every time he talks to one of his friends, he's always praising me. I'm like, oh. And my grandmother's the same way. She also raised me. It's always just constant. Like I never received praise from either of them. Maybe here and there, maybe once every 10 years I got something, but it's always like nothing. And then they're talking to someone on the phone and just praise. I'm like, oh wow, subhanallah, he knows I exist. That's great. So yeah, I think there has to be a balance. You don't want to breed insincerity. Inshallah, we'll stop here, and we have the books today. Sister, she brought the books in. If anyone's interested in buying a book, 1 second. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant sincerity in all our actions and all our sayings. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who can catch ourselves when we're insincere, and to rectify our intentions, and gives us the ability to renew our intentions constantly, and to be wary of our intentions, and to have sincere intentions. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us always sincere, and to keep us of those who refrain from backbiting and not talking bad about others. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be with our brothers and sisters in Gaza and Lebanon and all throughout the Muslim world, and to grant them aid over their oppressors, and to bring a end to the occupation, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathira. Inshallah, if someone wants to purchase a book for today, the books are $15. Of course, you could give as much as you want. So it's $15 for the book that we're doing, and it's nice to have the book to follow along, inshallah. And if you don't have cash, you could give a general donation to the masjid. Yeah.